Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got a top 32 breakdown for the Core TCG Las Vegas Regionals that happened this past weekend. There are over 1,000 players, 10 rounds of Swiss, best of 3 top cut afterwards, and we've got this top 32 that we see here today. A couple things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of One Piece content. I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you want any of the deck lists for this event, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. Also, for this event, I was able to do the live stream with Brayan from Stage 0, so really appreciate Core letting us do this. I think it was a great opportunity. I know a lot of you guys are really hungry to see some gameplay for OP11, and I'm happy that we're able to provide that to you guys. So if you want to check out any of the games, you can check them out. Link to the description as well. They're also linked on this page too. And lastly, I had a lot of people ask me about the dice and the tokens and stuff that were used for the live stream too, so you can check them out on my store on Eggman Events too, on the dice and tokens in the top left. So check that out if you guys want to, and let's just jump on into this. So as mentioned, this was in Las Vegas, 1,000 players, 10 rounds of Swiss, best of 3. This is also the second weekend of OP11 and Star Deck 23 to 28 legal for us. And again, this is a day 1 format for us. I guess it's day 2 kind of, it's a week 1 kind of format where we get these new Star Decks that were not released in Japan quite yet. It gets out at the end of this month, so end of this week, and we do have some changes for our OP11 format compared to theirs. So of the top 32, we have 5 copies of the EBO2 Luffy, 5 copies of the OP11 Luffy, 5 Betty, 3 Bonney, 3 Teach, 2 of the purple and black Luffy, 2 of the mono purple Luffy, 2 Lucci, and then single copies of Yamato, Newgate, green yellow Law, Buggy, and the black and yellow starter deck Luffy. So again, a huge variety for this event, right? I know a lot of people are saying that purple Luffy is still good, and you do see that we do have 14 copies of a purple Luffy in this top 32, so almost 50%, but it is still spread across 4 different leaders who honestly do play the game pretty differently, despite all being like purple Luffy leaders. We see Betty still very active, mostly because of those purple Luffy leaders. And then we do see a lot of the decks that got support from these star decks in this top 32 too. We've got Bonney, we've got the Teach, we've got the Buggy, we've got the purple and black Luffy, and also the Yamato. Did I say Yamato right? I don't think I did, right? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, the only one we're missing is Shanks, which is kind of understandable to me. I think it is generally panned as the worst of the 6, but I still think the deck could be viable, but it's still not really performing in this current meta. So anyways, if you guys want any of these deck lists, you can find them again linked in the description. We're going to go over the top placing leader for each one of them. We also have a 33rd place, which was a unique smoker, which we're going to go over. And thank you to JakewithTCG for sending me a message and sending me their experience in the deck list too. So we're going to go over that too. So let's just jump into it with our first place list, which is Nick's version of the blue and purple Luffy. And I will say this is a pretty unique build, at least build for me. One I hadn't really seen before jumping into the top 4, right? Most people are kind of still on the general package, and I think going into this event, a lot of people are saying, yeah, purple and blue purple Luffy is a really strong deck, but we know what these decks look like, we know how they play, and so that does offer a lot of ways to kind of counteract their game plan, and this probably threw it all for a loop, right? The general idea with this deck, I think, is kind of revolves around the Don Quixote Rocinante. This came out in OP10, so on play, you can trash 1 event card from your hand. You get to draw 2 cards, but also end your turn if you have 7 or more Dawn cards on your field. Set up to 2 of your Dawn as active. So what's really, really good about this card specifically is that you do get to get rid of a lot of your events that you needed kind of earlier in the game for like your ramp or being able to kind of declog your hand. So Gear 2, the Beam Sword God Threat. I don't think you ever really discard the Giant unless you have extra copies of it, but very good for that. We also have the 8-drop Don Quixote do Flamingo, and I think a lot of people, including myself, are like, wait, that's not, purple 8-drop, where's Katakuri? We're using this Don Quixote instead. So kind of a lot of analog kind of translation to what the Katakuri does. I also talked to Nick at the end of the tournament. He says that Katakuri is a great card, but I think this game plan works really well as well. So on play, Don -1, play up to 1 Don Quixote Pirates type character with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. And then also on your opponent's attack, once per turn, you may rest 1 of your Dawn, add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it to active. So generally speaking, this this does ramp an active, ramp a Dawn rested as long as you have one or more active, if that makes sense. So it kind of has the same end of turn Katakuri effect. There is like a little bit more ways for them to interact with it, because they could just like get rid of this card before they attack using something like a red rock, but still very good. But also the on play effect is really nice. So you can kind of sequence it for something like where you play Sanji into Dofi into Rosinante, which is just an absurd amount of characters to play out for only technically 9 Dawn, right? You're playing 13 plus 9, so like over twice as much value than what you're putting into it, which is really strong. So with all of that, the end of your turn too, Rosinante does help you just be able to use your Gear 2 as well as your Gum Gum Giant, which is really nice for the format. Other than that, we do have a couple of your Don Quixote Pirate stuff. We've got Sugar, which is a searcher, then can also find itself. We've got Giola being able to kind of like, I think, help with the Betty matchup at times, being able to say, you know what, just rest 2 Dawn, rest something, and then I can interact with it on the next turn. So I think that can be really impactful. And then just kind of the rest of the deck that generally a little bit more standard for it. So we are only running 15 copies of Don Quixote Pirates cards. We're playing half the deck of the Straw Hat cards. So I did ask him, he did whiff in one of the top 4 matches on the top 5 for a Straw Hat card. And he was like, yeah, that's the only time it's happened over like, a dozen plus games this weekend. So I think it's it is like a line that you have to walk, but this is a really unique deck list. I know a lot of you guys are looking forward to it, and I don't know, I haven't seen enough to do to say, oh, it's way better than what our traditional packages are, but it's really interesting. I think it does have a great way to interact with Hody specifically. You're almost never going to be tapped out for Dawn, and I think that's very strong. You do have like a little bit less blockers without 8-drop Katakuri, but also instead of having an 8-drop 9K that plays a 5/6 is really, really good too. So not much more to say. Here's the build, and congratulations to Nick for their finish with the Don Quixote Pirates version of the purple and blue Luffy. Next up, we've got the green and purple Luffy. So this is Cal's version of the deck here, and as opposed to something that is maybe more innovative, we do have a deck that just can't really be innovated much more than we've seen. Right? We've seen a lot of green purple Luffy in EBO2, and really you cannot really tell if this is a EBO2 list or an OP11 list. I think the only kind of indications that it will be a bit more of an OP11 list is because we are running 3 copies of Luffy Taro. I think most people have gone from 2 copies to 3 copies. This card is just a little bit too strong for what it does to kind of take it out to 2 copies. Being able to put 2 bodies of your own on the same board is really great. So that helps the deck a lot too. A lot of people are just saying, I'm not going to play my Sanji Pudding on 5. I'm going to wait till 7, use this Luffy Taro. That also lets me get the draw from Sanji Pudding, and then also get the 2 Dawn back from the green purple Luffy effect. So that's really good. In general, since there is a lot of purple Luffys in the format right now for OP11 too, I know more ramping is available to us. So we have Frankie at 4 copies. If your opponent doesn't get rid of this card, this is just offer like a lot of additional Dawn. Generally, like 1 Frankie gets you 2 Dawn, 1 on the on play, one for the 1 attacking, and usually they'll try to clear it, and if they don't, you get to keep doing it, but that's very nice. And then the Chopper, I don't know how I feel about this card anymore. We've been able to see a lot of decks being able to kind of respect what this card does, and also respect the fact that if this card doesn't leave the field, then you don't get to use your leader effect. So there, it does offer like I think it's a little bit more risky than I think some people are identifying, because a lot of people will respect that, I don't need to attack you this turn, or I can kind of make some inefficient attacks to get rid of the Chopper blocker and then hit you with the really big ones. So because of that, I don't know how I feel about this card. I think it is so good. The ramp that you get from this can be great if you're really behind on your Dawn and stuff, but you do have to be careful. It's not like a 100% like need card, or even like a 100% like best in slot. I think is a decision that is kind of risky at times, but other than that, I think green purple Luffy's in a really good spot. I think you're going to continue to see it being played. It's just a really consistent deck, right? We have so many searchers. Our early gain curve is just really great. There are ways to prevent our opponent from interacting with us, and being a 6K leader without really much of a drawback, and if your setup is really, really strong. So this is their list. Congratulations for their 2nd place with Luffy. And then into the top 4, we've got 2 Bonnies into this. We had 3 Bonnies get into top 32, and into top 8 we had 3 Bonnies as well. So I think this was a deck that did a lot better than a lot of people expected, especially me. I thought this deck was okay into this format, and I did play it this week on Wednesday Night One Piece. I'm like, oh, this is actually a pleasant experience. I only played it once, and I'm like, this was probably one of my best times playing Bonney. I felt like the deck felt a little bit more consistent. We did get a whole new starter deck, which you're going to see the 3 Bonney lists are kind of different in a lot of their construction. Right now, this is Teacabo's version of the build, and we also have Casey's version of the build here too. So this being able to, just show the differences for what the builds can look like. Generally speaking, I think there is like a decision if Kitten Killer is worth it. I really like this card a lot, but it is not like super necessary. We see Teacabo not really run it. There is also the 2-drop beige. I think this card is actually pretty underrated in the sense that this is just so good at fixing our broken hands. The fact that like draw 1, trash 1 is such a coveted skill in this deck, right? We have no way to be able to cycle out our other cards from hand. Like purple has like Gum Gum Giant and like Nami, like just a lot, like at least blue purple has like a lot of ways to fix what our hand looks like. Green has like nothing, and we have so many bricks with our Hody Jones, with Eustace Kid, sometimes with Shanks, right? All of these cards kind of just get clumped up into our hand. So having beige just help us kind of declump it, I think is really strong. We also have the Basil. I think most people are playing a couple copies of this. Just another 2K that sometimes you need to just put another body on board, so that does help you. Rouge, I felt like had a bit of a resurgence. It wasn't really popular, and like I think OP09 and OP10, especially like Blue Dofi being able to answer this so effectively with Trafalgar Law just meant like it was never worth it to establish it on board. So I think that's kind of changed in this meta and can help you just get that extra Dawn every turn. We do also have some additional like 5 costs. We see like if you want to play Bonney or Smoker, for example, we have like 1 copy of Rosie in this build from Casey, just in case you do see like it on curve, and being able to play that is really nice. We do also have like Zoro, pretty popular for both builds. Strictly speaking, like this card can win you the matchup against blue purple. It says like you better play red rock against me, or I get to just go off next turn. And I think this card is really strong in those scenarios. And then just kind of the rest of the kind of green card package. So generally speaking, I think Bonney's in a pretty good spot. I would argue one of the best metas for it since release in OP7. I do think that there's a lot of good techs, and like nothing from the deck was like super explosive. And also like unironically, the super rares, the Kitten Killer and the Lom Beppo are the least ran cards from the Bonney Bonney cards I've found, right? I think except for X-Ray, I think no one's playing the X-Ray 2K, but Beige and Basil Hawkins I think are great ads. I think Kitten Killer personally is a really good ad, and a lot of decks have to just like randomly respect that you can just get that 1 Dawn back whenever you want. And I think that the Bonney again is something that will probably rise in a little bit of play in the next little bit. So these are the 2 builds. Congratulations to all our Bonnies in the top 32. Next up, we've got Teach. So this is QB's version of the deck, and I've been saying since the beginning of this format, I think Teach is strong, but it's a deck that's going to start off pretty slow just because of the nature of how the deck works, right? You have to be very knowledgeable of every matchup. You have to be and that's not only for like what your deck construction looks like, but when are the opportune times to use your leader effect to discard a card to prevent them from using their on plays, right? We did get some new support. I think most people are playing just 2 copies of the Kuzan and 2 or 3 copies of the Marshall.D.Teach. I think these cards are really great, and I think specifically the Teach is something that you can kind of build your deck around a little bit more. I've been seeing a lot of people play a lot of these more like destruction heavy decks, right? KO heavy decks, like using like cards like Tempest Kick. We're also playing Finger Pistol in this build specifically, which is mildly rotated out, I think, for this format. Not a lot of people are playing Finger Pistol outright, but having ways to get rid of 7-8 cost by just playing your good old Von Augur into Finger Pistol is really great. I think like still like 5-drop Kuzan into whatever you need to on the next turn. It just helps you immensely to kind of set up some good removal plays, and it's just really helpful too. So other than that, you kind of know what the Teach decks look like, right? Half of the deck is just like choosing your 3 to 5 tech cards that you think are good for the meta. The other half is just knowing the best way to play this deck in current format against current players. And I think this deck is still in a good spot. I think it's going to continue to get more and more popular the next couple weeks. And congratulations to QB for their finish with Teach. Next up, we've got Purple Luffy. So this is Flechazo's version of the build here. And, the mono-colored Purple Luffy, right? The old leader from OP05 that, still just gets a lot of benefit because it does get to ramp pretty unconditionally in the fact that you can just always make sure that you ramp once or twice as long as you want to take the life for it. And then also the fact that you do get, access to Giant and some new cards as well. So generally speaking, Purple Luffy got its new star deck back in October last year where we had like the Luffy Taro package, which has been generally the way you play the deck since then. But with OP11, a lot of people have been kind of shifting to what I would call like a more kind of value and defensive based build, mostly with the 4 copies of the Katakuri. I think this is a deck that is actually like better than most to take advantage of this card. The fact that we can like easily, if you go second, we can ramp to this card like a turn early, which is really, really strong, and then just kind of have it for the rest of the game. It also means that like the 8 or the 9 drop Luffy is in a really, really good spot too. A lot of decks like kind of have to just respect that this is a 9 drop 10k, and then if you don't get rid of it, you'd have to just hit this 10k every turn. Also against decks like blue and purple Luffy, where usually the cost of the power of their cards cap out at 9k, and they really can't afford to use Dawn on their characters every turn. This Luffy just stays around for the majority of the game, and if you hit like with 2 of them back to back, a lot of decks just kind of crumble with the amount of like immediate pressure that you have. So other than that, we just do have like the general purple Straw Hat cards, right? We do have like a couple of Tekker ads because we don't have the the Luffy Taro kind of restriction for the deck. So like we have Onami, right? We have 4 copies of Sanji, which I think this card is great to play on curve instead of the Luffy Taro. There's a lot of decks that just you care about interacting with, specifically too if you're getting it's anything that plays Bon Clay, right? You can just say Sanji and then 5k into your 1k Bon Clay, which is great removal. And then lastly, we do have the Conquerors of the 3 Worlds Ragnaroku. So being able to use this to get rid of an 8 or less, which I think works really well with specifically the 8 drop Katakuri, is really great in like the mirror matches against other like blue purple Luffy's. A great removal card for that. Not really searchable, but it does help you get some rid of some bigger cards. Also, if they have if they have an 8 drop kit out but they don't have protection for it, this is really good for removing that too. So other than that, I don't have much more to say. This is the build here, and congratulations to our purple Luffy player Flechazo for their top 16 finish with this list. All right, no, this is top 8. This was top 8. Yeah, there it is. Anyways, all right, next up we do have our Yamato. So this is the build here from PuppyByte. Was able to get an X1 finish with this deck, and we were able to see a lot of this deck on day 1. And this was something that got a lot of support from its new starter deck, right? We have pretty much like every card from it, right? We've got Yamato 1 drop, we've got Izo 2 drop, we've got the Doji 3 drop, as well as the Kinemon and the Momo, this is like really good finisher for the deck, and really just helps you like get the full advantage of your leader ability even on an empty board, which is I think one of the weaknesses of Yamato is that if you keep their board clear, their leader effect doesn't really exist that much. So the kind of other thing to say, like this is like just a mono or like almost like a mono Wano build, right? The fact that we just mostly using, I know there's like a lot of different builds that I've been able to see. Have been playing like more of like the Fortress build, which is kind of defending the 8 drop kid, but generally this is just like good old like, you know what, we want to do a lot of double attack, we want to punish our opponents. We did see like on stream, like turn 2 we put the Tonoyasu underneath or on the board, and then afterwards we were able to like easel the next turn and have like I think it was like a 9k banish, which is insane. We also I think Doji is like a good card. I know a lot of people are like deciding if this is good or bad just because it only pops something if your opponent has 3 or more life cards, which doesn't always happen, but you can kind of slow roll your opponent at times, and if you do, you can get rid of like a Sanji or Pudding with this card, since it does hit a card with base cost of 5 or less. So even if they have the Marigo, you get that removal. So worst case, it's like a 1 case, you don't feel bad about it. It is like something that you have to kind of see on curve, and then if you don't, then it's just kind of is kind of rough. But I do know like against like Bonney decks too, being able to get rid of Cavendish. Also, if you're playing against 5 life leaders, you can hit them once with your leader ability. They'll still have 3 or more life, and then you can still use your Doji effect, which is nice. So other than that, just kind of the general stuff we're seeing with the Kikunojo, Momo, and stuff. We do have also the Demonic Aura 9 Sword Style Asura Demon 9 Flash, which being able to get rid of a blocker is great. Also, we do have kind of like these random 3 drops that exist. So again, like the fact that you just play Doji out, and then if you don't attack with it, it just kind of stays on board for the rest of the game. Your opponent like won't likely use like a priority removal for this card, and then because of that, you can like use the Asura Demon with like other things. So like having like a backup Hody in the deck, I think is really great too. So really great finishing. Congratulations to PuppyByte for their top 16 with Yamato. Next up, we've got Edward.Newgate, and this is JCM's build, and it's been kind of the meme, right? You can know if JCM was at an event if you see a Newgate in the top cut pie chart. So I know he's been grinding pretty hard for this event compared to Florida, right? He was at both events for this format in the North America and he was able to get a top in both of them. So some minor changes I've been seeing, and I don't believe he was on Shiraya, but this I think is a really great card, and it kind of a format where a lot of decks are increasing the power and base power of their leaders. This does get out of a lot of attacks, but also you can pressure that. We do have like the new add of Lime Juice, this being able to get rid of a blocker essentially for the turn, right? So if your opponent can activate blocker on a character that has 4k power or less during this turn, so that's really nice, and something that it's expensive, but you can use like Ace Lime Juice to be able to get like an unblockable kind of situation against something that has more than 4k, which is good. I know a lot of people are on Ezo still. I think that's strong. I think the Mole Pistol is like one of the best ways to remove a lot of sticky bodies on board. This is great against A Drop Kid. This is good against specifically like Sanji Pudding. This is also really good against even like Black Purple Luffy if they play their new 6-drop as well. You can get rid of it. There's just so many targets that this hits. It's just in a really, really good spot. So other than that, I think the 10-drop Goldie Roger, this is probably the best leader to take advantage of this card. Just the fact that we naturally go down to 0, and we kind of like build a board at the sacrifice of our own life most of the time too. Your opponent just has to always respect this card, because at any moment they could just lose because you have it. So I think it's a great finisher. I'm sure it's won a lot of games, not necessarily from the effect, but because your opponent can activate like essentially, right, this just says your opponent can activate blocker against Newgate for the turn, and it's a 10k 13k rush card that if you feel confident to play this early, you probably could as well. So this is the build here from JCM. I know that he's been grinding pretty hard, did pretty well, and then ended up into a body match into top 16, which is really, really tough for that. I think that's like the hardest counter for this deck, and so he was able to take it. He went 1-2, so he was able to get a win, and I think he had a heck of a run too. So here's a build from JCM. Congratulations for their finish with Newgate. Next up, we've got Stardeck 13 Luffy, and yeah, we've got this guy back as well. This is honestly a leader I've been like mildly missing. I do know that like I get why the bans happen. I do think Gekomori should be banned. I support all that, but man, I really just enjoyed playing this deck, if I was being honest, which I know is probably like a little unhealthy for the format, but I still kind of had fun with it. But it has had to shift and change how it works because of the lack of Gekomoria, and instead of being like a deck that is mostly focused on like recurring your 9k leader, I think we are kind of more of like, it's kind of like a green and yellow law in the fact that we do get to put bodies on the board, but at the sacrifice of our own life kind of thing. We do still get to be like a 7k or 9k leader. The issue is that it's more difficult for us to continue to do that, right? So like being a 9k leader is probably like once or twice instead of like the entire back half of the game as we've been kind of used to in the more traditional builds with Gekomoria legal. So some new cards to kind of consider. We do have Zeus, which I remember when this card was announced, people were like, oh, Gekomoria is definitely getting banned, because if you can't give blue, yellow black Luffy this card, because it is too strong at being able to do one. It's a 2k. The fact that it helps you regulate how much life you have, the fact you get rid of a 5 or less, such a good card for this deck, and so not surprised to see it. We do have like the Kuzan, just at a couple copies to help us get like things in the range for Zeus, are also our Rocket Luffy here, and then we do kind of pivot it back into the Ace package. So 3 of the 2-drop, 3 of the 7 or 5/7 here. Being able to use this effect to gain rush, I think, is very strong. I also think, like, unironically, this is just a thought that I had while watching, is like the 6-drop Momo can actually be really, really strong for this deck too. This Momo, just because like we're naturally already putting like 2 Dawn plus on our leader every turn, so it's something where we want to do that effect anyway. The deck is revolved around it, so we can put the 2 Dawn there. We can even like put a 2-drop out to make our body a 7k, and then we can put this Momo out. It becomes an 8k for the turn, and then we still get to attack another 8k with the Momo. So double 8k attacks from like a board of nothing is great, and then also like if you set it up and you had like an ace in there, I think that's something good. I know this, I'm not talking about the deck itself in theory crafting, but it's really cool to see this get a top 32 finish. I know a lot of people have been trying to kind of crack the code for this deck post Gekomoria. I think this is a really good deck build for that too, and hopefully I see more and more people experimenting with the deck, because it's really unique. I really do like it, and it's really cool to see it back in a top 32 after all this time. So not much more to say. Here's the build here from shinyray, and congratulations for their top 16 with the black and yellow Luffy. The next up, we've got Betty, and we did have 5 copies of this leader into the top 32, but only 1 survived into the top 16. This is Warmest's build build of the deck. And I think that there is some diversity in Betty. If you look at all 5 lists, there are some changes here and there. I think, again, Zeus is a great card for this deck. The same kind of mentality of like, well, I need to remove something. I need a 2K. And you know what? The cards in my life in this matchup are generally a resource, right? I think most people who play Betty realize that most players will try to starve them out of resources. They're like, you know what? I only give you more gas by giving you cards from your life, from either drawing cards or also just playing them off with your trigger effects. So I'm just going to like not attack you until the very end of the game, right? That kind of makes sense. So with that, though, I think that this is, most people kind of know how Betty works. It's a deck that's been out for a while, since OP05. I think it's gotten kind of relevancy right now, specifically because it has a good matchup into Purple Luffy and some other decks that exist in this format. It's also probably been the worst matchup for this deck has been Rob Lucci, and this is probably the format where Rob Lucci's been at an all-time low from release, right? And like on release, this deck came out with Sakazuki, right, which meant like that this deck didn't have a good time. And then Gecko Moria still had some like removal, and Sakazuki was still around. And as soon as Sakazuki got banned, we had Rob Lucci, which pretty much picked up the mantle from that one. So the fact that removal is lower right now, a lot of decks are a little bit greedier, or taking like the first turn or two off from interacting with board to either ramp or getting some setup, means that Betty is a deck that can really, really take advantage of it. So not much more to say, though. I think we're going to see a lot of Bettys in the future. We did get it won 2 regionals in Europe back to back, which we'll go over those deck lists sometime later this week. But I think Betty's in a good spot, and congratulations to Warmest for their finish there. And then breaking into the top 32, we do have Rob Lucci. So this is C's version of the deck here. And I think, generally speaking, I think myself and probably others kind of misrepresented what Rob Lucci would look like in this format. I know a lot of people said, oh, this deck is dead. I've heard that like a dozen times, a dozen different formats, right? Pretty much every format, like something happens to Rob Lucci. All right, it can't recover from this, and yet it's still really relevant. So this is generally like not like we're not using any new cards from OP11, right? I think our newest card in the deck. What is our newest card in this deck? This deck is old, right? These are old cards. Is it? It's not Rob Lucci. What? These are old cards. Is it really like Shirahoshi? Can't be. Is it Jack? It must be Jack. It has to be Jack, right? This is it. That's the newest card for this deck. Other than that, we're playing more or less cards that existed when it came out a year ago in OP07, right? So I think the deck is still very strong if you get removal. A lot of people aren't playing around removal as well, or just kind of assuming that removal doesn't exist as much. So if you hit them with it, it goes a long way. 4-drop Kuzan on curve wrecks a lot of decks right now. You don't have a lot of opportunities to find it outright, but if you do, you feel really good about it. It just means like your opponent is really hesitant to play anything on the next turn, because they know that you can just like Kuzan into Brook to remove it, or something like that. Even like Kuzan into Rob Lucci, right? The fact that Kuzan and leader effect already gives the -5 though is such a strong way to do something when your opponent's likely going to play a 5 cost next turn. So other than that, I think that we're going to see probably like a slow uptick throughout this. I think this is something that I think I put in experimental because I wasn't sure what I was thinking about this deck into the format. I think it's viable. I think that with the numbers of people on the deck, I think this deck probably overperformed for the weekend. And I'm kind of done with Rob Lucci personally, but I do think it will get again that uptick, and I think I'll have to respect it a little bit more. So I don't have much more to say. Congratulations to C for their top 32 with this deck, and I'm looking forward to. I'm not looking forward to. I just want Rob Lucci gone, but we'll see. We'll see him in the future. I think he's still here to stay. So here's the build, and let's go on to the next one. So we've got the purple and black Luffy. So this is Brayan's as well as PNLaimon's version of the deck. They both got a top 32 with the purple and black Luffy. And if I was playing in this event, there are 2 decks I would either play. Is either Nami if I felt like I cracked the code, or if I didn't, I'd kind of shuffle back to the purple and black Luffy. So we've got 2 different builds. I think they're both pretty unique between like some tech choices, right? Both decks are obviously playing the 6 cost Luffy. This has made the deck go from like kind of off meta to relevant, I think, in a lot of ways. There are a lot of decks that just have to respect this card, and you generally get to be a 7k leader for very little cost and a lot of consistency in the late game. Your opponent can't answer this card. I do think this deck can kind of run out of steam from defending if your opponent just keeps attacking into the 6-7 Luffy, because you do have to keep attacking with it for you to get the effect. But I do think that yeah, this deck is in a really good spot in this current format too. So other than that, playing like 9-drop Luffy on curve and not really like getting any consequences for that is really nice. I also do think like the 6-cost Luffy is really strong for the deck here too. Being able to like this deck also can kind of use this card with a little consequence. There's also some matchups where people try to starve you out of resources, so being able to take that card from life and draw it to help you defend later things is great. You pretty much like end with a board where you're saying, okay, everything on the board is a 7k. If you can't attack into that without any Dawn investment at times, you really can't do anything, which is really, really strong. So we do have like a tech of the Brook as well. This is generally not seen as much in the deck from my experience. I do know people kind of experimented with this into like purple Luffy and like even like green purple Luffy at times, but the fact that this is a way for us to give minus 2k power and kind of trade well into things is good. It is like a little bit unfortunate that you have to have a kind of like a setup turn for it, but also there if you end up going first and you get your ramp to go from 1 Dawn, or sorry, like 3 Dawn to 4 Dawn to 6, you really can't use either of your Luffy abilities, right? The fact that your opponent has to have 5 or more Dawn, if you're not playing against a ramp deck, they're only going to be at 4 Dawn, so you can't really get these effects anyways. So playing Brook instead on that 6 Dawn and then being able to set that up for next turn, I think can help you get some really good trade potential. Your opponent has to respect that this card is a bit of a menace as well. And, 6 costs outside of like Lin, is a little bit expensive for removal, and we can make him 7 cost with your Monkey.D.Luffy effect. So I still think this deck is really good. I do expect it to continue to top in this format, and congratulations to both Brayan and Laimon for their finish with the Luffys. Next up, we've got Trafalgar Law. So this is Blaze's version of the deck, and this has always been, I think, a fan favorite leader, no matter what leader it is, right? We've seen red green law, we've seen the red and purple law, and now we're on the green yellow law, and kind of like following the path of like more of like the red purple law, where it started off a little bit slow but then ended up just getting kind of broken with a little bit of support here and there. I think this law is kind of on the same path, right? The fact that we do get like the new 2-drop Kid Killer, I think, is unironically just better in this deck than it is Bonney. The fact that it's a searcher that you get these effects for is great. The on your opponent's attack doesn't come up very often, but we are playing the room, so sometimes it can. We also identifiably don't play the 7-cost law in this deck, which I generally don't see that. I think that card is still very good, but kind of the idea for this one is we're a little bit more aggressive leaning, and we don't care about the heal if your opponent doesn't have any cards left in their life area either. So that's kind of the trade-off for this deck. So it does give us a lot more room for cards that I think we're having a hard time to fit otherwise if we were playing the 7-cost law, including 4 copies of Bonney and 3 copies of the Resend law. There's been a lot of discussion I've seen on if this card is good enough to run, because if you have the setup for it, this card is fantastic, and then if your board is empty, this card does literally nothing, kind of thing. So with the kind of the idea though for this deck specifically to say, I don't really care about playing my 7 costs as much. I really just want to play out a lot of my 5 costs and get advantage from that. I think the Resend law makes a lot of sense. So we are playing the Hody Jones. We are playing 8-drop Kids, since we are playing like the beige and being able to get that advantage. And having the beige I think helps this deck a lot. It's actually like the fact that if you play it behind Kid, like either they attack into you or they give you a free heal, and that's kind of what you need at some points too. So I don't have much more to say. I do think that green yellow law is going to continue to be good. I know it's doing really well in OP12 with some new support that we get in there, and that's even before they get the Kid and Killer from their star deck. So I think we're going to see even more of it when we get those cards too. But this is a build here. Congratulations to Blaze for their finish with the green yellow law. And then to wrap up our top 32, we've got Buggy. So this is AiDON's version of the deck here, and I think Buggy is kind of in a spot where a lot of people were very confident into this deck, including myself. I thought this deck was going to be pretty relevant. I do think that you still get some tops with it, and it did get a top 32, but at the numbers that people are playing it, I don't think it's like overperforming that kind of ratio, right? I do think the deck is strong. It also hard checks deck. Like Betty is like an auto win. Rob Lucci is also an auto win, right? 2 decks that are, did get a top 32 today. And there were definitely timelines where this deck had like the bracket run that just made sense for it to get to the end. But you do also have, I think, some tougher matchups that do kind of humble this deck too. So there is kind of some decision on deck building for this still. I know I've been seeing a lot of different builds for this one. This one has no consistency cards outside of Mr. 3, which I think is interesting. We are playing the Sables from Star Deck 3, which I really do love this card in the deck. I think it's really great. And I've really considered playing this card in other blue decks, right? The fact that this, interacts with green and green and purple Luffy perfectly is fantastic, being able to bounce the 7-drop back to their hand. Also, the purple and black Luffy, same kind of thing. That gets some great advantage from the trigger there too. We are also playing the 7-cost Dofi, which this card is also just really great at being able to return 7 cost back to hand. So you mean like this deck is like kind of teched into like green purple Luffy and the black and purple Luffy. You're less good into specifically the the blue and purple Luffy because they have like 8 and 9 costs almost exclusively. But for those, you can kind of have like your Buggy because they'll let you kind of set up and get to that late point too. So I think that's kind of like a good way to kind of approach this deck in this meta. I do think that it's difficult for it to hit both the kind of high value cards at the end, but also like kind of the low aggressive decks. But the fact that we do have 7-cost Buggy to make us kind of less worried about, again, Betty and like Zoro, if Zoro is present, and kind of those more like 3-drop, 4-drop aggressive decks, it means that we do kind of have this room to be a little bit greedier on our top end and just really, really slow our opponent down so we can, very effectively play our 10-drop Buggies as well. So really cool build to see that kind of difference with the Dofis and the Sables. And I do think that this deck is still relevant. I think it's going to be less relevant than I was initially expecting for this format, but I don't think this is going to be the last time we see Buggy for this one. So again, this is AiDON's version of the build. Congratulations for their finish. And to wrap up this video, we've got Smoker. So this is JakewithTCG, again, got 33rd and is the bubble for this event with an X2 record with Smoker. And I know a lot of people are big believers in this, and technically, like in my mind, if someone goes like X2, like a record that can get into top 32, it's comparable in my mind to topping an event. So the same thing. It's just unfortunate with kind of how the tiebreakers work. So I do think that there's a lot of different builds I've been seeing going around. I've been seeing like the pure aggressive builds that it really depends on, do you think that you can establish and effectively use 8-drop Kid in this deck, right? A lot of people say, no, we can just be aggressive. We don't care about this card, or like, this is the best thing in this deck. We have to play it. It's, what keeps us relevant in this meta. So I see both ways. And I do think that, the fact that we do have Rosinante and that it's a more searchable card in this deck now, thanks to the Kyujaku. This is like a really good buff for this deck. The fact that it does also kind of represent potential to kind of untap 2 Dawn in situations where we can't, by being able to give something plus the 1000 and then getting that like +2s places, right? I think that's great for the deck. We do also have some more blockers. We're also playing the Borsalino blocker, which I don't see this very often. Activate main, you can rest this character. Up to one of your Navy type leaders or character cards can also attack active characters during this turn, which, guess what? Smoker is a Navy card, which is really great. Also, there are some like weird times where like you have Virgo, which is also Navy, so you can use that to attack into like a 4-1 Bond Clay kind of situation, or even into like some blockers that are just like 0 cost or something. I think this Borsalino is actually like a really cool card that also like just fits into the deck, and I haven't really seen it tacked into it, so I think that's really cool. So other than that, I think that this deck does have some legs. It's unfortunate, again, it did get a 33rd place finish, but I do think that there probably is some room for Smoker. I think I probably underestimated this leader maybe a little bit into this format. I know a lot of people are believers for it. It's just like sometimes I feel like the consistency is missing. There's just so many times where I'm like, man, I have like only my Hody Jones in hand, which are great, but I'm a 4-life leader and I've been needing to also draw cards from life to be relevant. So we'll see if this deck continues to stay relevant. I think it will get some tops here and there, and congratulations to Jake for their 33rd place finish. But that's going to be it for this video. I know there's a lot to go over. Again, if you guys want to see any of the deck lists, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events. Thank you again to JakewithTCG for running this event, as well as letting myself and Brian do the event. And shout outs again to Brian for all he did to help work on the stream. He really did a lot of the production work for it and the setup and equipment, and we would not be able to do it without him. He was, I really do appreciate him. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.